My name is Nora Callahan. I was 38 years old, working as a project coordinator for a mid-size logistics company in Delwood, Ohio. I had spent the better part of 11 months organizing a family vacation that I also paid for entirely, a fact that only became relevant the night my family celebrated Thanksgiving without me, and I came home and canceled every reservation before midnight. I want to be careful about how I tell this, because the easy version makes me sound like a martyr, and I was not one. I knew exactly what I was doing when I booked the trip. I knew what I was doing when I made the payments. What I did not know, what I had genuinely not allowed myself to see clearly until that Thursday evening, was that the arrangement had never been a gift freely given. It had been a toll. A standing expectation. I had been paying it for years without knowing there was a ledger. And the moment I failed to meet some unspoken requirement I had never been told about, the warmth that came with it evaporated so completely it was as though it had never existed. That is the part worth telling. Not the cancellation. Not the 72 missed calls. The part where I finally understood what I had actually been doing all along. My family is small. My mother, Renata, lives in the house on Harmon Street in Delwood where my sister Dana and I grew up, a two-story colonial with a side yard that floods every March and a front porch that faces east, which matters in the winter when the light comes through the kitchen window in a particular way that I have always found steadying. Dana is 3 years older than me. She married Greg Poletti 11 years ago, and they live in Birchfield Commons, about 14 minutes away by the route that cuts behind the old grain elevator. Dana and Greg have 2 kids, and Greg has a large extended family that appears at every significant occasion in force, loud and warm and slightly overwhelming if you are not accustomed to them. I had always been the one in our family who held things together logistically. Not because anyone assigned me that role formally. It accumulated, the way these things do, one favor that became a standing expectation, one emergency that became a precedent. I was the one who remembered that the furnace needed its annual service before winter. I was the one who handled the insurance claim when the basement flooded and my mother could not navigate the forms. When our mother's car needed replacing 3 years ago and she was short, I covered the gap, $4,200 that was never mentioned again by anyone, including me. None of this was done resentfully. I want to be clear about that. I did it because I was able to and because I believed the family worked a certain way. I believed there was a mutual account, that what I put in was registered somewhere, even if no one said so, and that it would show up when I needed it. That belief was the thing I lost on Thanksgiving. Not the trip. I had given years of steady, unglamorous effort to keeping this family functional. Not the dramatic kind, no grand rescues, no borrowed thousands in a crisis. Just the ongoing accumulation of tasks that someone had to do and that I had, reliably, done. Scheduling the specialist appointment my mother kept putting off. Sitting with her through the paperwork when our grandmother passed. Keeping track of which nephew had which allergy, which cousin was estranged from which branch, which of my mother's preferences had shifted as she got older and harder to read. None of it announced. None of it logged anywhere. Just the work. I assumed it was visible. That was my error. The trip began, as most of my larger ideas do, with a spreadsheet. In January of that year I had floated the idea to my mother. A full family trip to Mexico the following December, a week at a resort, everyone together, something we had never done as a family because there had never been money for it and before that there had never been time. My mother loved the idea. Dana loved the idea. Greg was enthusiastic. I began researching in February. By April, I had selected Paradiso Del Mar and confirmed availability for the second week of December. I put down the first deposit, non-refundable, and over the following months I paid the balance in stages. The total came to $34,780. That figure covered flights, the resort package, airport transfers, and one dinner reservation at a restaurant on the property that Dana had specifically requested. I paid it. I did not ask for contributions and no one offered them, which I noted and then set aside. The one thing I asked for, the only concrete thing, was Thanksgiving. I wanted our family Thanksgiving at my mother's house on Harmon Street, just the 4 of us plus the kids, the way it had always been before Greg's family started being included every other year. I did not think it was a large ask. I told my mother in September and she said of course. What I did not know, and what no one told me, was that Dana and Greg had invited his entire family to Thanksgiving. I understand now that there were reasons. Greg's parents were getting older. His sister had moved back from Portland, and this was her first Thanksgiving in Ohio in 5 years. There were structural reasons it made sense to consolidate the holidays, and I can follow the logic. What I cannot follow, and have never been given a satisfactory explanation for, is why no one thought to mention it to me. I had spent the previous 3 years quietly absorbing the costs of keeping this family functional. I covered the furnace inspection the year my mother was between jobs for 4 months. I drove 2 hours round trip to pick Dana up from the airport when Greg's flight was delayed and she did not want to pay for a rideshare. I organized every birthday gathering, researched every gift when our mother's preferences became harder to read, handled the coordination for the estate paperwork when our grandmother passed. None of it dramatic. None of it announced. Just the ongoing work of being the person in the family who did the work. The trip was the largest version of that. 11 months of logistics. Dozens of emails with the travel agency. Coordinating passports. Dana's had expired and I reminded her twice in writing and once in person. Choosing rooms that would work for the kids. Selecting the transfer company. Arranging the specific dinner reservation Dana wanted with a 2-month advance notice requirement. I had asked for 1 Thanksgiving. That was my number. 1 meal at my mother's table, immediate family only, before we all flew to Mexico together in December. The call I should have received never came. I arrived at my mother's house on Harmon Street at 2:30 on Thanksgiving afternoon. I had a sweet potato casserole in a ceramic dish on the passenger seat. I could see, even before I turned into the driveway, that something was different. There were 4 cars parked along the front of the house that I did not recognize. A minivan I associated with Greg's parents sat in the driveway itself. I sat in my car for a moment. The casserole dish was still warm in my lap. I went inside. The living room was full. Greg's parents were on the couch. His sister, the one who had moved back from Portland, was in the armchair near the window. 2 of Greg's cousins were standing near the kitchen doorway. My mother was moving between the kitchen and the dining room with the particular focused energy she gets when she is hosting people she wants to impress. She saw me and smiled. "Nora, you made it. Put that in the kitchen." I put the casserole in the kitchen. Dana came in from the back hallway. She looked at me and something moved across her face. Not guilt exactly, more like the brief calculation of someone who has already decided how a conversation will go. "It got bigger than we planned," she said. "Greg's mom really wanted everyone together this year." "You didn't tell me," I said. "I thought Mom told you." "She didn't." Dana tilted her head slightly. "Well, you're here now. It'll be fun." I walked back to the living room. My mother intercepted me near the hallway. "It worked out perfectly," she said. "More the merrier." "You told me it would be just us," I said. "Nora." Her voice stayed warm, the way it does when she is about to say something she has already rehearsed. "You're always so particular about these things." "It's just dinner." Something went tight across my shoulders. Not hurt, not anger, not yet. Something closer to the feeling of a number that doesn't add up and you've been staring at it too long. "I specifically asked," I said. "In September." "You said yes." "And you're here," she said. "That's what matters." I looked at her for a moment. "You could show a little more gratitude," she said, quieter now, the warmth still there underneath the word. "We're all making an effort." Dana had drifted back into earshot. "It honestly feels ungrateful, Nora, that you're upset about this. Greg's family drove a long way." I did not respond. I stood in the hallway of the house on Harmon Street where I had grown up, with the sound of Greg's family laughing in the next room and the smell of my mother's stuffing coming from the kitchen, and I understood something I had been understanding slowly for a very long time. Greg came in from the dining room then, carrying a dish, and he nodded at me with the easy confidence of a man who had not thought to wonder whether I knew. "Glad you made it, Nora," he said. "It's going to be a good one." "Greg," I said. "Yeah." I said nothing more. I looked at him for a moment, then turned back toward the hallway. I set down my purse. I picked it back up. I'm going to go, I said. My mother blinked. You just got here. I know, I said. Give everyone my best. I left the casserole. I walked to my car and sat in it for a moment without starting the engine. The street was quiet. The curtains in the front window were lit from inside, and I could see shapes moving through them, the shapes of a full room. I started the car. I drove home. I let myself into my apartment and closed the door behind me. I took off my coat and hung it on the hook by the door. I set my keys on the counter. I filled a glass with water and stood at the kitchen sink and drank half of it. I set the glass down on the counter. I stood there for a moment with my hands on the edge of the sink and looked at the window above it, which faces the back of the building and the parking structure behind it, and there was nothing to see there except the structure's concrete face and the light it reflects. I turned around. I opened my laptop on the kitchen table. The screen lit up the kitchen. Everything else was dark. I navigated to the travel agency's client portal. I found the booking under my name. I opened the reservation summary. I read through it once, slowly, as though I had not spent 11 months building it. The agency's emergency line was staffed. The woman who answered had a calm, professional voice, and she did not seem surprised to be receiving a call at 11:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving. I told her I needed to review the cancellation terms on a group booking. She pulled up the file. She walked me through what was refundable, what carried penalties, what had already passed its cancellation window. The non-refundable deposit I had paid in April, $1,150, was gone regardless. The remaining balance, she confirmed, was within the cancellation window for all parties except the primary holder. I could recover $6,340 if I rebooked under my name alone on a modified itinerary. The family portion, the rooms, the transfers, Dana and Greg's flights, my mother's seat, could be canceled before midnight with a full refund to my card. Do you want to proceed? She asked. I reached into the kitchen drawer beneath the takeout menus and took out the manila folder. I had put it there in April, the day I paid the final balance. 3 pages of travel agency contract, the total circled at the bottom of page 2 in black pen, $34,780 in my own handwriting. I had circled it the day I paid the final balance, not for any reason I could have articulated at the time, just because it felt like a number that deserved to be acknowledged. I set the folder on the table in front of me and opened it. I turned the folder so the contract faced me. I looked at the number. I said, "Yes. Please proceed." She processed the cancellation while I was on the line. She sent the confirmation to my email. I heard it arrive, a single chime, while she was still explaining the refund timeline. I thanked her and ended the call. I did not close the laptop. I did not move the folder. I sat at the kitchen table in the dark with the screen in front of me until sometime after 1 in the morning, and then I went to bed. My phone showed 72 missed calls when I woke up at 7:15 the next morning. 14 from Dana, 9 from Greg, the rest from my mother's number, and 1 from a number I didn't recognize that turned out, when I called it back 2 days later out of curiosity, to be Greg's mother. I made coffee. I stood at the counter while it brewed and looked at the kitchen the way you look at a room when you are deciding something and have already decided it. Then I called Dana back. She answered on the first ring. "What did you do?" she said. "I canceled the booking," I said. "Nora, the trip is in 3 weeks. I know when it is. You can't just," she stopped. "Do you understand what you've done? Mom was counting on that trip. We all were." "I understand," I said. "This is insane. This is completely insane. We made one change to Thanksgiving, and you burned down a $35,000 vacation?" "I canceled a booking I paid for," I said. A pause. Then Greg's voice in the background, asking something. Dana's hand covered the phone for a moment. "Mom wants to talk to you," she said. "Okay," I said. My mother's voice came on. Quieter than Dana's. More careful. "Nora, I think there's been a misunderstanding." "There hasn't," I said. We didn't mean to hurt you. Yesterday was just. I know what yesterday was, I said. You're really going to punish us all because of one dinner? Something settled in my chest. Not satisfaction, not vindication, just a kind of flatness, the feeling of a decision that has already been made and does not require defending. You called it ungrateful, I said. That I was upset. That I was particular. She was quiet. I paid for 11 months of a trip for this family, I said. And when I asked for one specific thing in return, you agreed, and then you didn't tell me you'd changed it. Nora. That's what happened, I said. I'm not asking you to argue about it. That's just what happened. Another silence. Then, carefully, what are you going to do now? Go to Mexico, I said. By myself. I heard her exhale. You booked it for the family, she said. I booked it, I said. That's the part that was true. I ended the call. I set the phone face down on the kitchen table. The manila folder was still there from the night before. I picked it up and straightened the pages inside and put it back in the drawer. I went to Mexico in December. Paradiso del Mar for 7 nights, the room I had originally selected for myself, the dinner reservation at the restaurant Dana had requested, which, as it turned out, I enjoyed very much. The water was the particular shade of green that photographs cannot accurately capture. I read 4 books. I slept 9 hours a night. I came home with a slight sunburn on my left shoulder and the quiet, specific feeling of someone who has done something they will not regret. 6 months after Thanksgiving, I was sitting at the same kitchen table, using the original contract from the manila folder as a reference document while I set up a new savings account, the kind with a named purpose, a line for what it's for. I wrote mine in the purpose field. It felt accurate. Dana sent a card in February. No return address, which I found unnecessary since I obviously knew where she lived, but I understood what she meant by it, a kind of distance being proposed. The card said she hoped we could talk when things felt calmer. I put it on the counter. I did not throw it away. I did not respond. The talking, if it ever comes, will happen on a timeline I have not yet set, and I have made my peace with that. My mother called once, in March. I let it go to voicemail. She said she had been thinking and she wanted me to know she understood why I was upset. The message was 4 minutes long. The word ungrateful did not appear in it, which I noticed. I have not called back yet. My life in Delwood is quiet in a way it was not before. I cook on weeknights. I take a long walk on Sunday mornings past the park on the east side of town where the path runs along a drainage creek that is surprisingly pleasant in early spring. There is a bench at the far end of the path, facing the water, and I sometimes sit there long enough for my coffee to go cold. I don't mind. What I learned, what that Thanksgiving clarified in a way that nothing before it had, is that generosity given without a floor is not generosity. It is an arrangement. And once you see it clearly, you cannot see it any other way. The manila folder is still in the kitchen drawer. I leave it there on purpose. Not as a reminder of what happened, I don't need a reminder, but because it is a document I paid for, in more than one sense, and it belongs to me. If any of this sounds familiar to you, if you have been the one who holds things together while wondering whether anyone is paying attention, share this with someone who needs to hear it. You don't have to announce anything. You just have to know what you paid and what you're owed.